And how we doing, everybody? Hello. Good evening. Welcome to a Monday edition of Fenway Faithful. And, not too much to talk about here. We're going to do some mailbag tonight. We got a little Alex Bregman to talk about. I mean, nothing crazy, no big rumors or anything like that in regards to Alex Bregman, but his name has been popping up today. Coming out of Fenway Fest this past weekend, his name came up a lot over the weekend, and that seemed to be the main talking point when it came to the Red Sox for today. So, again, welcome. Appreciate you stopping by here tonight. If you can, on the way in here, if you can, hit that like button for me. We're trying to get to 100 likes for tonight. That is the goal. And we got a lot of familiar faces here in the chat, so always appreciate you stopping by. But let's dive into it here. Let's circle back to what Chris Cotillo put a few days ago on Twitter, saying here, unlike last year when they told high-dollar free agents they needed to move money to engage, the Red Sox, per sources, are telling some free agents they are prioritizing some bigger money pursuits before circling back to the middle and bottom of the market. Now, this past weekend at Fenway Fest, like I said, Alex Bregman was a name that continuously came up with Alex Cora, with Craig Breslow. I feel like he came up with Sam Kennedy at one point. Everyone was talking about Alex Bregman. The guy had the sign at one point saying, make Bregman an offer. Now, over the weekend at Fenway Fest, they were talking about Rafael Devers, being the third baseman there. If you did bring in Alex Bregman, he would be the second baseman. Alex Cora, he has talked at length over this past weekend and in the past as well. He sees Alex Bregman as a second baseman. If you go back to, or he went back to, how he had a conversation with Bregman back in 2017 or whatever it was, and how at the time they had Jose Altuve at second base, you had Carlos Correa at shortstop. So really, when Bregman, he was ready to come up to the major leagues, the best spot for him at the time was third base. But you got to remember, he was drafted as a shortstop coming out of LSU. So really third base, that was at the time, it was like Alex Rodriguez, right? He moved over to third for Derek Jeter at short. So, but Bregman, if you look at, the StatCast stuff, the way he moves around still, the range is still very good with him. He has the build of, more of a middle infielder. When it comes to a third baseman, you look at a guy, a little bit bigger, but Alex Bregman, a guy that moves around very well. Now, if he went to Boston, he would be the second baseman. Now, maybe you're thinking here, we've been hearing a lot about Nolan Arenado in the tea leaves, in the rumor mill, whether it comes to, guys on the national stage talking on MLB Network, or, even accounts out there like Cardinals Live who have been putting stuff out there. Arenado has been a guy that's been mentioned more. And, we've been seeing other guys out there saying, maybe Bregman to the Red Sox doesn't look very likely. But today, Bregman's name was coming up a lot, with the national media, right? Ken Rosenthal, let's go to fair territory here. The quote here, thank you to Boston Sports Gordo for typing out the quote here today. It makes my job very easy here. He says here, what I believe is happening is the Red Sox are simply saying, we don't think he's going to Toronto. We don't think Detroit is going to sign him. We're going to take our chances that no one else will, and we are going to leverage this. Listen, I've been saying this. I have been saying this since what feels like, for about a month now. Now, last night, I did talk at length about the idea of Nolan Arenado, right? I don't think it's as bad as people think it would be. If they did move Casas, yeah, that would stink. It would stink to lose that much upside with the power. But I think if you brought in Arenado, I don't think it would be that bad. I think as a guy at Fenway Park, he would fit like a glove. I think that bat would get back on track with the ballpark that favors him more. His defense would be better at third base. However, I have said from the get-go, I would rather just have Alex Bregman. That way you can keep Tristan Casas at first base, even though I would like an upgrade defensively at third base. That's what I would do personally. I'm looking at the numbers, right? Sure, Rafi did make some improvements in some areas this past year. Did look pretty good at times defensively, but from a consistency point of view, you could really argue that they could use an upgrade there at third base. But if he is dead set on staying there, he wants to at least get one more shot at it to show that he can be a third baseman in Major League Baseball, then you could bring in Bregman and he could be your second baseman. And that way, everyone kind of stays happy. Devers stays in the fold. Casas, you keep his bat in the lineup. He's still your middle of the order bat. And Bregman, you bring him in. He can be a good defensive second baseman for you. He's going to give you some good production in the lineup. He also, like Arenado, Bregman fits at Fenway Park very well with the pull swing. He would use the monster to his advantage, had 30 doubles this past year. Actually, that was something I wanted to look at here. When it comes to Alex Bregman with the doubles this past year, where did he rank? He was, I believe, out of how many guys here? 129 qualified players. I believe he ranked up there pretty well. Yeah, he was tied for 40th overall. So, yeah, Bregman, a doubles machine. You could potentially, I think, see, I mean, my goodness, who was the leader this past year in doubles? You had Jarren Duran with 48 doubles this past year. I mean, for crying out loud, I think you could really see 40 doubles from Alex Bregman at Fenway Park. I think it makes a lot of sense. He'd be a great fit, right? But what I like about the idea of Bregman, and I've said this for a while, is the versatility factor. When it comes to Bregman with the Red Sox, you can kind of move him around wherever it may be. Put him at second base for now. Let's say at some point, Christian Campbell comes up, right? And he's ready to go. He can play second base. The one thing that would be interesting is with Bregman, if he plays second, well, then Vaughn Grissom, who Alex Cora, when he talked with me, he said, he deserves a mulligan. Well, what happens with Vaughn Grissom at that point? He seems to be the odd man out. He's really just depth at that point. Could he, be a guy off the bench? But then what happens with David Hamilton? I would imagine at that point, Vaughn Grissom, he is probably at AAA if you did bring in Bregman, right? But at least you have him there. I'm not sure how that would shake out. But let's say Christian Campbell, or let's even say Vaughn Grissom. Let's say one of those guys, they are very much showing that they could handle the second base duties. Well, Bregman, you could move him, right? Move him over to third base. Then that's when you could do something with Raffy at that point, depending on how he's playing defensively at third base. Another factor I want to bring up with Raffy too, it's also the durability factor. This is a guy that's had some injuries in the second half the last couple of years. I look at it from that point too. But again, I'm okay with giving Raffy more of a shot there. I mean, obviously he's the highest paid player on the Red Sox right now. Hey, if he wants to show he can do it, hey, why not? But at least you have Bregman there as a contingency plan in case, you did decide to make a move. Now, and again, I don't mean to bring up the Tristan Casas stuff again, but whatever. We can all sit here and say, Casas isn't going to get traded. There's no way they trade him. But, Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam, they went on their podcast today and they reiterated one more time, Tristan Casas is absolutely being talked about. They said it again today on the Fenway Rundown. So, yeah, just putting that out there. If it came down to it, right, I don't know. Again, it's getting back to the contingency plan. I already know I'm going to get a comment. I already can see it. Someone is going to say, why do you want to trade Casas so badly? It's not that. I'm more just pointing out, if the Red Sox were set on moving him and you brought in Bregman and you needed to make a change in the infield and you had to put Bregman at third and move Raffy, to first or whatever it may be, then you could revisit that then. Or whatever happens with Yoshida. Either way, my point is that Bregman has the versatility, so you could play him at second. You could play him at third. If Trevor Story went down, I'm sure he would be just fine playing at shortstop. So that's what I like about Bregman. He moves around. Now, moving on to a couple other things here. Actually, getting back to what Ken Rosenthal said. He says here, the Red Sox, he believes the Red Sox are saying he doesn't want to go to Toronto. Detroit's not going to sign him. I've been saying this for a while too. I think there could be a bit of a leverage thing going on here. Is that why the Arenado talks have, come up? Could they be saying, Scott Boras and Bregman, hey, listen, this is kind of what we're looking to do. If you're willing to kind of come down to what we're looking for, we'll make you an offer. That's another thing. People keep saying, oh, I love the sign where it said make Bregman an offer. But again, I do think that's a bit overblown because if he has received offers from Detroit and Toronto, they're obviously something he's not interested in. The Red Sox, I think, are a preferred destination for him because I think they are just about to bust through a competitive window here. Obviously, they're looking very good. You brought in Crochet, Walker Buehler. The park fits him well. I think he looks at the Red Sox and says, yeah, that's a place I would like to go. Sure, Detroit, young team, A.J. Hinch, looking like a team that's going to be competing, but the ballpark doesn't fit him very well. I think at the end of the day, I think you could see a scenario where if Detroit, if they make him a good enough offer, and we're getting close to crunch time, let's say we're in spring training at this point and Detroit is really the only team that has an offer on the table, or at least the best offer on the table, I could see him going there. But we have seen some stuff out there from the Detroit Free Press where, they see a difference when it comes to his value compared to what Boris sees, right? There's a gap there that has been reported. So if Detroit is not willing to go that extra mile, well, then Bregman's probably thinking, I haven't really hit well at that park anyway. I don't think that would favor me very well. I don't know if that's a place I should go to, right? I think he would be open to it, but I think it's a matter of will Detroit go that extra mile to get something done? And then you got Toronto. I just talked about this on the main channel just a little bit ago. Are they a preferred destination, right? Does he want to go there? Who knows? Maybe they could end up landing Roki Sasaki. I mean, who knows? But Toronto, same thing. The outlook for them right now, there's a big question mark there, right? Is that a place where he wants to go long term, or even in the near future? For the Red Sox, I think they just check off a lot of boxes, right? So that's where I think when Ken Rosenthal, he's bringing this up here, Toronto, Detroit. I've had someone, put out there, well, Robbie, if he ends up getting like a short-term offer, he'll just go back to the Astros. Well, the Astros at this point, it looks like they've moved on. I mean, they got Isaac Paredes at third base now, Christian Walker at first base. I mean, Jordan Alvarez, you're going to put him in the outfield, Isaac Paredes at DH. I had someone telling me today that you could put Isaac Paredes out in left field. Well, he hasn't even played in the outfield in his professional career. Well, you're going to do that? I mean, I don't know. That's kind of a big ask. I know left field, in Houston's not very big, but still, there's a lot more than just putting a guy out there when he's never even played out there. So I don't know, Isaac Paredes in left field. So the Astros, I'm not sure if there's a way to go home at this point. Who knows? Maybe they could figure something out. Maybe another team emerges. Maybe the Cubs, maybe they move Nico Horner. Matt Shaw could be your second baseman, and then Bregman could be your third baseman. I honestly think, and I put this out there today, I honestly, truly think the Red Sox are just waiting for Bregman to come down to some kind of a short-term offer for an opt-out. Because if you think about it from the Red Sox point of view, that might be something they prefer, where they give him a choice to opt out of the deal and possibly go elsewhere. Could it maybe like a 3 or 4 year deal? I really could see the Red Sox being in that 4 year, right? I don't know if they go 5. I don't know. Maybe you could do 5 with some kind of an opt out, right? Or some kind of terms in there it could be good for both sides, right? That's kind of where I'm at. I think that's what the Red Sox are trying to do here. I think they're doing the JD Martinez thing. Yeah, there's other teams out there that are gunning for his services, but I really just think that's what the Red Sox are doing. I think they're waiting on it. I think they're using the Arenado talks to try and push him a certain way. But I was told today, I got a little birdie news, everybody. Little birdie news. I was told today that from a guy that I trust very much, that he would not be surprised if Bregman signs in spring training. I'm getting everyone geared up for that. We could be seeing maybe the next month of this. Don't be surprised. We saw it with Matt Chapman. I feel like, honestly, going back to last offseason, I feel like I even talked about this. I might even have a tweet out there. I might have to go dig up an old tweet saying, Bregman, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up signing in spring training, because Bregman, the year that he had, because you are seeing regression in the numbers when it comes to the offensive profile. So I think at the time when I put that out there, I was wondering about that. So again, that's what I was told. Don't be surprised if he ends up waiting until spring. And maybe that could work in the Red Sox favor. That's what they did with JD Martinez at the end of the day. And I feel like, when it comes to Bregman, if he ends up waiting that long, I don't think it would really matter all that much. Bregman, he's a pro's pro. He'll end up being fine, right? Sure, maybe he's got to get some at-bats and whatnot. Maybe he's got to kind of ramp things up pretty quickly if he ends up signing late. But we saw Matt Chapman. He signed late too, ended up having a great season. So, and then look what happened with Matt Chapman. So I wonder if maybe the Red Sox, again, I'll feel like I'm repeating myself on that part. That's what I think they're doing. I think they're just looking to get him, some kind of a deal where he could get out of it, or maybe club options or something like that. I think the Red Sox, they just don't want to be tied down into a 5+ year deal, especially with all these young infielders that they have. Because you got to be thinking from the Red Sox point of view, and that's something that people bring up, and it's a fair point, that, the Red Sox, you got Christian Campbell. You got Marcelo Meyer. I mean, if you want to throw Vaughn Grissom into that conversation, right, you got him too. You have a lot of infielders, right? Trevor Story's under contract. Rafael Devers, at the end of the day, he is still your third baseman. So you have a lot of guys, right? You want to focus on the now. I'm not saying you should be planning accordingly just because you have all these prospects, but that is something where I'm looking at it from the Red Sox point of view, and they're thinking, guys, we like guys like Meyer and Campbell. They could be dudes for us in the next couple of years. We don't want to be tied down to something long-term with Bregman. Maybe, like I said, they're willing to do like some kind of a 3-year deal with an opt-out, maybe like a 3-year deal with an option, 4-year deal maybe. Who knows? Maybe 5, whatever. I just don't think they want to go into that 6+ year territory, maybe even 5. That's the sense I'm getting. They don't want to tie themselves down, but I think they feel pretty confident because, listen, let's be real here. If he liked what Detroit was offering, or Toronto, if they have thrown down an offer, he would have been with them already. Absolutely, he would have been there. So, but again, just wanted to bring this up today. We had a lot of people, bringing stuff up. Robert Murray today. When Chris Cotillo did put out this tweet a few days ago, Robert Murray said today on the Baseball Insiders podcast that he immediately thought Alex Bregman, Tanner Scott. And that's what I thought too. I feel like I even said that. I feel like that was something I even mentioned. Didn't I mention that the other day on my show? I don't know. We had Trevor Plouffe today on Talking Baseball. They were doing their free agent predictions. I might have to do a reaction video to that. Where he feels like the more he thinks about it, the more it makes sense Bregman going to Boston. So there's that. Say what you will. Trevor Plouffe, he does have relationships out there. Maybe he's talked with a couple of people. I don't know. But then we also had John Morosi. They were talking about this today. Bregman and the Red Sox being a fit. Is this something that he's hearing? Maybe they wanted to, bring it up today. I'm not sure. Or was it just reaction to Alex Cora just talking about Bregman this past weekend? It is what it is at the end of the day. Again, I would much prefer Bregman than Arenado. If it ends up being where they make a move for Arenado and they end up moving Casas or whatever it may be, I think that would be an okay route too. I know a lot of people think it would be the end of the world and this team would be terrible. I think they would still be in a great spot either way. I think with Bregman, if you bring him in, I think they are at least a 90-win team. At least. I think they would be. I think he is that much of a difference maker. And I think Arenado, with him in the fold, I know you'd be removing Casas in that scenario. Who knows what other pieces would come in at the major league level. If there were some other positions that you shore up there. I've mentioned guys like Ivan Herrera with the Cardinals. If that happened, who knows how that would look. But I still think the Red Sox with Arenado would be a competitive team. I would much prefer, though, Mr. Alex Bregman. I think that really makes this Red Sox team dangerous. I think that makes them extremely competitive in what I think is a wide open American League. I really do think that. I think if you have Bregman as a guy here, wherever he ends up playing, I think this Red Sox team is very much capable of making a run in the postseason. If everyone stays healthy and things are good to go. We'll see what ends up happening. But moving on here. Let's move on. I want to make sure I don't go too long here tonight. We're gonna move quickly here. Now, let's get to Mailbag Monday. Happy Mailbag Monday, everybody. Happy Mailbag Monday. Now, let's get to the first question here. Everyone, if you can, hit that like button for me. We're trying to get to 100 likes. We're only at 37 likes. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you got to help us out here. Come on. We got to get to 100 likes. Let's get to the first one here. Here we go. For Miguel Torres. In the hypothetical case that we bring Bregman, what do you think they should do with Campbell and Grissom? Moving Campbell to the outfield could be an option, but in that case, what do you do with Abreu, Yoshida? Seems like we'd have too many people if we add Bregman to the mix. Again, we just talked about this, right? If Bregman ends up being a dude in your lineup, I hate to say it with Grissom, but I feel like he's a guy that would, he looks great. He looks like he's put on a lot of size. He looks good, right? He looks like he is ready to go, and I think he's very motivated coming into this year. But I think if Bregman's in the fold, I don't know, man. I have a hard time envisioning Grissom being in the mix. I feel like he would really just be a AAA guy at that point. He's just depth. If someone goes down, you can bring him up. But that's where another advantage of Bregman could come into play if, say, Trevor Story goes down, and Bregman can slide in there. And then, who knows what, I think Campbell is going to force his way in this year. This guy has been dynamite over the last year. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say Campbell needs a little bit more development, right? Let's say he's still working through some things. Grissom is someone you can call upon. But again, and I still know people out there are going to say this argument as well. If you bring in Breggy, right now, he would be the better option defensively at third base. He would be, right? So then at that point, could you see the Red Sox still making some kind of a move? I don't mean to bring up the Casas stuff, but it's out there. I'm just opening up all possibilities, right? If you did do that, if you did bring in Bregman, I know they say second base, but let's say things shake out, you could still move Raffy, right? That's the only way I could see Grissom getting into the fold is pretty much the point that I'm making. But then Christian Campbell at that point. The difference with... But then also I'll bring this up with Campbell too. Grissom, he could play a little bit of left field. And I think it matters, depends on what's the outfield looking like. How's Abreu doing? Could you end up doing... sort of platoon matchups there where you see Abreu going up against the righties and then either, probably not Campbell, but Grissom, maybe he just goes up against the lefties, and he goes out there and plays left or whatever it may. I don't know how you do it, but he could work his way into the outfield. I think more likely between the two, I think Campbell, depending on how the outfield shakes out, you see Campbell getting more of that. If he's ready to go and the infield is completely occupied, well, then you see Christian Campbell playing left, right? And then, there's also the argument, too, where, Ceddanne Rafaela, is he more of a utility guy, like a super utility guy at this point? I know Craig Breslow's talked about him being in center field. So there's that. So I think what the Red Sox have here, if Bregman's brought in a way, it's like a good problem to have because at least you have a lot of good players. I think that says more good than bad at that point. You just kind of have to figure out the puzzle, really, at that point. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Moving on from Nick. Where do you think this team, as it currently stands, would place in the division and the American League as a whole this season? And what moves would you make to improve that? Maybe besides the obvious, Bregman or Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates signing? Well, right now, I think this Red Sox team, I think they're right now, if the season started today, I think they're a wild card contender. I feel like they still need balance in this lineup. I think, opposing pitching staffs are going to attack this lefty hitting lineup. I feel like you need another dude as a right-handed hitter in this spot. I love the way the rotation is looking. I still think the bullpen is very strong. If I'm looking at some guys here, you asked the question, what moves would you make to improve that? Maybe besides the obvious Bregman or Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. I've mentioned before where, I think you could shore up the catcher position, right? As of right now, they are projected 29th overall at the catcher position. No offense to Connor Wong, but the defense was inconsistent last year. I am expecting regression with the bat because the batting average on balls in play was very high last year. I am expecting that to come down. Could you make some kind of an improvement at the catcher spot? Not quite sure. If you are looking at some other options out there, one guy I got my eye on, I wonder if he could end up being like a dark horse candidate for the Red Sox, is someone like David Robertson. A guy that, you could get him on a 1-year deal, I believe, because he is 40 years old at this point, but a guy that is still very solid and a veteran guy that can handle closing duties or setup duties. I think David Robertson makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. He just feels like an under-the-radar candidate that you're not really hearing anything about. Sure, Tanner Scott would be great, but I don't know if the Red Sox are going to pay the money. Honestly, the fact that the Braves came up in the Jeff Hoffman talks kind of makes me wonder if they were willing to go whatever it was, 4 or 5 years for Jeff Hoffman. I mean, could they turn their attention to Tanner Scott, who that has been a guy that's been on their radar, according to the reports? That's kind of really where I'm at. If I'm looking at, some other relief pictures, that is, I think, that's a spot where you gotta shore up. I think one more guy. Could Estevez be a guy on like a 2-year deal? I think that's possible. I don't know, maybe even someone like Jose Leclerc. You know what I mean? Like if you're taking a look at Jose Leclerc, a guy that went with the 4-seamer a lot this past year. If I were to go to Jose Leclerc on StatCast, if I were to take a look at the run values, good fastball this past year. But a guy that seemed, what was the ERA for Leclerc? 4.32. What was his FIP? That was a good FIP at a 3.48. But if you were to look at the run values with his pitches, the 4-seamer was fine, slider was fine, but he had a good sinker, so maybe he can come to the Red Sox and, maybe you could work something in there. He had a 3 on the run value, maybe a guy that could end up being like a kind of a cheaper option. That's what I think. I think they end up getting like a right-handed reliever. David Robertson, Jose Leclerc, Carlos Estevez, I think could be under the radar guys. Tanner Scott, sure. Yeah, I would love that. Kirby Yates. I feel like Kirby Yates is probably not going to come to Boston. I don't know, something about it, because he would be the closer. I feel like the guy that they end up bringing in is someone that has versatility in the back end of the bullpen. And if you wanted to name him your closer, depending on how things shake out, then that's the kind of guy that I see them bringing in. Like Tanner Scott has that ability. David Robertson has that ability. Estevez has that ability. Leclerc as well. Kirby Yates, when you bring him in, if you bring him in, he's your closer. So I think the Red Sox would like to have flexibility there, and and then Cora can kind of go with who he feels is the best. With Yates, if you sign him now, he's your closer, right? So that's kind of where I'm at there. And Bregman, yeah, of course. If not Bregman, if I'm thinking of some other guys, let's say that doesn't happen, and they still want to bring in, maybe Ha-Seong Kim could end up being an option there. I mean, defensively, he would definitely shore up some things, and he will have a little bit more time, because he is going to be rehabbing from shoulder surgery. So I could see something like that. I don't see Pete Alonso. I don't see that happening. So moving on here. Thank you for that. Appreciate that one. Anthony, as of right now, without Bregman or Arenado, what is your predicted win total? I would say right now, I don't know. I feel like 86 or 87 wins. That's kind of where I'm at. They've added, sure, they've lost a couple of guys, like Tyler O'Neill, Kenley Jansen, Nick Pivetta, but you've added some good ones here too. So I feel like you've made up for that loss for the most part. I feel like you've added a bit more there, and then you're going to be getting contributions from some younger guys, I believe. Guys are going to take steps forward. Trevor Story coming back. I think you're in that, high 80s range, like 86, 87 right now, personally. Alex, who's your breakout player on the Red Sox this season? Let's say Anthony and Campbell don't make it to make it more interesting. I actually have one. I got a dude. I don't know if this counts. I'd probably say Michael Fulmer. Michael Fulmer is a guy, missed all of last year, kind of coming back into the fold, but this is a guy that's had a lot of success in the bullpen going back over the last few years, before he got hurt. I think there's a good chance he can end up coming into the fold here and having a really prominent role in this bullpen. I'm looking at guys that are coming back from injury, like Giolito. I feel like this is a guy that's forgotten about. I could see him coming back. Again, it's not really like breakout mold. Those are more like comeback player molds, right? But, I'm really looking at the guys that are coming back from injury. If I'm looking at possibly, minor leaguers that could maybe come up and contribute possibly, it's not, to me, could you see Garcia, just kind of go crazy, and then all of a sudden, maybe someone goes down and maybe he could end up coming up and making some noise. He is still a little further away, but he made some noise this past year. Someone like Quinn Priester. Look out for Quinn Priester. They brought him in at the deadline this past year. A guy that didn't really find his way with Pittsburgh. Could he find his way into the rotation possibly? If you're looking at also Hunter Dobbins. Hunter Dobbins is a guy this past year. He had a lot of good things going for him. He made 25 starts overall between AA and AAA, and he put up really solid numbers. Depending on how things shake out with the rotation or even the bullpen or whatever it may be, guys going down, well, hey, someone like him, Quinn Priester, could really, really emerge. But you know what? Actually, going back to the bullpen. Let's go back to the bullpen here. One guy, I'm looking at Guerrero, right? Let's actually go to Guerrero. Luis Guerrero came up this past year, had a cup of coffee, 9 games. This guy's got some good stuff, man. Hard velo, throws in the upper 90s. This guy looked great when he came up. I'd look out for him. I think there's a shot he could end up emerging in this bullpen possibly. But if I'm looking at it from the offensive point of view, I mean, yeah, you're looking at Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell. Those are the guys. I don't know. Could you see a bit more from Cedame Rafaela? According to Alex Cora, he's put on a little bit of muscle this past offseason. Maybe you see a bit more out of him. Maybe you see a bit of an improved slash line. I don't know if this one counts. I could see people thinking this sounds silly, but why not Tristan Casas? Could Casas be in that conversation? I feel like you haven't seen the full best of Tristan Casas, right? You saw a very good 2023 season, but he had some injuries that year. This past year, obviously. I think there's still more to offer with Casas. Could he fit into that breakout? I mean, I know he was in that, the Rookie of the Year candidacy there. I don't know. I'm just saying it from the point of view, I think there's more there. I'd like to see more. We'll see. Moving on. From Charles. This is a funny one. John Henry just called on your services to construct the next great Red Sox team. The only catch is that he needs as much money as possible for his other business ventures and will not allow you to exceed the CBT. What moves are you making? Well, if I'm looking at the payroll as of right now, I usually go to Red Sox payroll, but I'm just going to make it quick. So they are, give or take, right around like $25-30 million under. Well, first guy I'm bringing in David Robertson. He'll probably cost you, what, I don't know, like they say here on Fangraphs, $10 million. I think that's fair. I'd bring in David Robertson. And I could maybe I don't think Ha-Seong Kim is going to get this. I don't think Kim's going to get that. I wonder what Kim is going to end up getting, because he had the shoulder thing. So will teams maybe want to do like a 1-year deal kind of a thing with an option, opt out kind of thing? They want to see how the shoulder's looking, So I could maybe see like a cheaper 1-year deal. If it were me, I'd probably go Kim, and I'd probably go Robertson. That would keep you under the CBT. You're improving the defense in the infield wherever he ends up playing. Robertson shores up the back end of your bullpen. It's kind of where I'm at, Yeah, if I'm looking at 2 cheap options, it's pretty much where I'm going there. Moving on here. From Dave Lewis, who do you see as the closer by midseason? Hendricks, a free agent ad like Scott, or someone like Slayton or Guerrero? I don't know. There's something about, I don't know, man. I'm weird on Hendricks. I'm weird on him, right? It's just because he hasn't pitched. And I just wonder. I wonder if he's going to end up having to really kind of get his legs under him a little bit at the beginning of the year. It's kind of where I'm at. It's kind of where I'm at with him. Sorry, I thought I just got a text. Honestly, out of all these guys right now, I'd probably say Slayton. With what he showed this past year, I could see Cora really giving him a shot. And honestly, look out for Whitlock, man. I think Whitlock is going to be more of that multi-inning guy, kind of what he was doing back in 2021. Coming in certain spots. Maybe he could be a guy that ends up getting opportunities there. But for me, let's say Hendricks doesn't work out. I don't think Chapman's going to be a guy there. I think I would go Slayton at this point, because he is a guy that really handled himself well this past year. So that's where I would go. And last one, I'll do a fun one, a bit more of a personal question from Laser Show at Han Solo. Hi, Ginger Man. My question is, do you see yourself going beyond YouTube and getting a job with, say, Nesson or ESPN or something of the sort? My friend, I don't even know what the heck is going to happen here in the next few years. I'm letting life take me. Whatever ends up happening, I'm just going to keep doing my best here on the channels, and we're just having fun. If opportunities come up, that's great. I'm thankful. I will cherish any opportunity that comes in front of me. But who knows? I'm just kind of going with the flow at this point. I love what we're doing here. I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm, going to get any opportunities from anyone. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably nowhere near the level of these guys over at Nesson or ESPN. I mean, those guys are pros, guys, the ladies and gentlemen that work there. So, yeah, man, who knows? But hey, if opportunities come up, I would love it. But I know for a fact the channels will always be here. That's what I think. But everyone, I'm going to wrap it up here. Just a quick one for tonight. Nothing crazy. Just wanted to talk a little Bregman since he was coming up today. Went to the mailbag. But if anything does come up for tomorrow, we will be back here and we will be talking more Sox. But everyone, if you can on the way out, hit that like button for me. The goal tonight was 100 likes. We're only at 60 right now. We have 130 people in the chat. I feel like we should be able to hit 100. But everyone, go have yourself a good rest of your night. And I'll talk to you next time.